recommending this evening to construct that alley. We will do it with city forces. This is kind of that same area where we had the petition to do paving in that area, but it's the next block over essentially is what we're looking at. So this evening we are asking the council to approve the installation of that alley between 6th and 7th Avenue Southwest and 8th and 9th Street Southwest.
What is the wish of the council?
Motion to approve the installation of the alley in Block 20.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Storley, second by Councilmember Liljegren. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Labor Agreement Appendix B, Law Enforcement Labor Services approved. John.
Thank you. This is a correction to our labor agreement. When it was approved, the Appendix B listed all the officers with a grade and step. When the patrol officers changed grades from 7 to 8, I missed and assumed that there were two officers, Ken Koppas and Josh Andrea, who were at in the proper grades and moving their alignment. They needed to be moved from grade 3 back to step 3 back to step 1 when they moved up the grade. It didn't affect their overall pay, but it puts them in the proper alignment for their step increases in the future. If we didn't make the adjustment, then they would be receiving higher wage increases this year than the other employees. So we did catch that before the wage implementation went into effect. However, we just have finally come to getting it through between the unions and us and having everybody sign off on it. So it was just an error on our part. The other factor that we realized when we were looking at that is that we had two other patrol officers, Eric Hegna and Trace Swanson, who were in earlier steps in that grade 7. So when they were moved down the grade and back, they were actually at a position where they were getting both. Effectively, they were getting both years' step increases in the first year. So the agreement is for them that they will stay at their wage increase this year. They won't receive an additional step increase this year. Then in 2020, they'll get the next step increase. When we factored in all of the pay increases, they're right on target with what everybody else, all the other employees would be eligible to see within this contract time period. So those were agreed upon with the unions. It just needed the final approvals to make that contract effective.
What's the wish of the council?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Knopfler, second by Councilmember Hanson. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Ordinance number 16, 7th series. Authorize and direct sale of property to Morrison County, introduced 5/6/19. What's the wish of the council?
Motion to adopt ordinance number 16, 7th series. Direct sale of property.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Storley, second by Councilmember Lundberg. Any discussion? I don't remember what's in ordinance. Call the roll.
Knopfler.
Yes.
Liljegren.
Yes.
Lundberg.
Yes.
Zilka.
Yes.
Turcotte.
Yes.
Storley.
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Kuschig.
Yes.
Carried.
Parking restrictions removal, Broadway Avenue East. Greg.
Yes, so we received a petition from Manka Plaza requesting the removal of the 3-hour parking restriction on Broadway Avenue East. This is just on the south stretch of Laura Beach Plaza or Burger King over there. We sent out letters to the adjoining property owners. We did not receive anyone in opposition. We did receive one in support from Laura Bees or from Manka's there. So tonight we are recommending that we do remove the parking restrictions on that stretch since there was no opposition to the letter sent out to the adjacent property owners.
What's the wish of the council?
Mr. President, I move to approve the Public Work Director's recommendation to remove the parking restrictions on Broadway Avenue East.
Motion by Councilmember Lundberg, second by Councilmember Liljegren. Any discussion?
Yeah, Mr. President, I have a question. How is that going to affect the apartment buildings across the other road? If they start parking over there, is that going to become a problem?
The ones to the south or the ones to the east of that stretch?
The ones to the south, there's that line of
There's
apartment
apartments over
buildings.
there, yeah. They do have parking in the back as well, so I don't see this being an issue because they've only had 3-hour parking there in the past, and so usually people are creatures of habit. If they weren't parking there before, I don't see that being an issue. Originally, this was because, if you remember the original configuration of the middle school, there was a lot of middle school teachers parking over on that stretch, and that's what prompted, is my understanding, that's what prompted the parking restrictions in the first place. So with the school's reconfiguration of that through lane and parking over there, they've created quite a bit more parking for their teachers and staff, which has eliminated quite a bit of the demand on the Broadway Avenue. So even though, you know, we've got those apartment complexes on the south, I don't see that being an issue for the parking.
It looks to me like the petitioner wants to free up that time frame, so more of the workers at the strip mall are parked over there, freeing up customer parking.
That's
Would that
correct.
be accurate?
That's
Okay.
correct.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. New business, resignation of Christopher Hoffman, Fire Department. Accept. John.
Thank you. Christopher Hoffman will be, did sell his house and he's moving out of our response area, so he won't be able to meet the response time and serve on the fire department. So regrettably, we will accept his resignation.
What is the wish of the council?
Mr. President, I move we accept the resignation of Christopher Hoffman of the Fire Department.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Hanson, second by Councilmember Goshek. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Authorize execution of Sourcewell Student Intern Agreement, Mitchell Shermers, Administrative Intern. Approve. John.
Thank you. I was approached by Mitchell Shermers this past school year. He is a student at University of Minnesota Duluth studying statistics and actuarial studies. Met with him and in our email conversations that we had before, very interested in focusing on some financial aspects with city government, and we have some opportunities with that with the budget season coming up. So really looking forward to him coming on board and being able to help us out, and certainly very enthusiastic that we get to do so with the Sourcewell Student Intern Agreement that covers his costs and actually paying him an hourly wage for his time here. So there's no direct costs to the city for wages for Mitchell to be interning with us.
What is the wish of the council?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Knopfler, second by Councilmember Storley. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Airport Commission recommendation, agricultural lease agreement, Joseph and Nancy Berg Properties LLC. Approve. Greg.
Yes, last year, the waste plant, as far as their biosolids, it's the waste that they spread on farm fields to help fertilize the farm fields. We used an area called AP6 out at the airport. We solicited from 3 local farmers that farm on airport property currently if they'd be interested in farming that area. We received 1 proposal back from Joe Berg in regards to farming that area. We did receive a second one today, this morning, but the rent that they were offering to pay was less than what Mr. Berg was looking at. So we are recommending, and the Airport Commission is recommending as well, to have Mr. Berg farm the areas known as AP6 with the same rent that he's paying on his previous one, and then extend that agreement out to 8 years just because of the expense that he has to get that area ready for crops.
What is the wish of the council?
Motion to approve the lease agreement with Joseph and Nancy Berg Properties LLC.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Storley, second by Councilmember Lundberg. Any discussion?
Council President, I'd like to add some information about this too. This land hasn't been in egg production, and with our application of biosolids, we have exceeded a nitrogen limit for the application on that area. This bringing it into an egg production with this lease will get us back into compliance with that nitrogen limit. We've had discussions with MPCA on this matter with the planting rotation that we put into the proposals asking for this to put this ag land into production. So it'll get us back into compliance and it'll meet the notice of violation. So we'll be able to satisfy that aspect for MPCA's purposes.
Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Golf Course Event Center, authorization to solicit bids. John?
Thank you, Council President. This would be to draft and solicit bids for the Golf Course Event Center. Very similar to the proposals that we've discussed. We have a design for the facility that we would utilize to draft it. Very much looking at establishing a base bid with some minimal thresholds for finished space, primarily in the upper levels, and then looking at alternatives on top of that for a lot of the finishing aspects. Notably, we had a lot of conversation about this in the work session, and would be open to any input and direction that the council would want to give if they have additional input that they'd want to make into this motion.
What is the wish of the council? Or can we get a motion so we can discuss it?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Hanson, second by Mayor Zilka. Discussion.
As I mentioned at the work session, I think we're putting the cart in front of the horse by putting out bids now, because I think it's important to know exactly how we're going to use the space and how the space is going to cash flow and what kind of staff we're going to require to run it. And I think that it's important to put all of that into place and have a really good idea, a business plan, so to speak, and including cash flow projections, as far as, what kind of revenue a space like this can generate before, and how we're going to generate that revenue before we, start building it. We need to have a plan as to how we're going to operate it.
Mr. President, from what I understand with this is we're just going to open up bids to see what it would cost, right? There's no cost associated with this at all?
Other than the posting in the paper for the bids where we'd advertise.
But when you get bids, then you have to accept one, right?
No, we're
Okay.
not obligated to accept any bids, and it would be noted that we, in the solicitation, that we reserve the right to reject any and all bids.
So the purpose of this would be basically, can we move ahead with this if we can keep it within our budget? If they come in with something that we can't work with, then it doesn't pay to put a whole lot of time into something else when we're not even going to move forward with this, right?
And it would, correct, it would change that we would either have to look at abandoning the project, changing the scope of the project, or adding additional revenue into meeting it up to this scope if the bids do come in higher, which I think would then lead into modifications of this facility and how it is utilized and how it is operated. As I said and stated, we're open to any and all methods of operation, and we certainly can look to exploring how we are going to effectively operate that golf course, whether it's with city staff, contracted staff, or
But
renting
this
it, leasing it.
solicitation for bids is the facility alone. It doesn't address operations whatsoever, correct? And then I just want to further understand, it doesn't even specify the construction of the building, basically capabilities, the site, what what's your idea, right?
We have a design and site location, as well as a lot of specifications that were helped to be developed by some groups that have been assisting us with the golf courses, and some of them being volunteering time.
How do they differ from the first plan that came back to us that gave me sticker shock?
That it is a modified alignment of the facility to better utilize the space, avoid some operational inefficiencies, try to put the right puzzle pieces in the right location so there isn't wasted space within the building. And then the design that we do have is with a lumberyard. We would need an architectural sign off on that design from whomever gets the bid, but it's on a proposal that, based on people in the industry, they believe that in this method that it potentially could get into our budget range, versus what we were looking at working with larger construction firms. They don't have access to potentially the materials at a reduced rate, or even maybe thinking outside the box and asking for volunteering or other members of our community that may be willing to support this project, but not so much in a fiscal, just a straight financial or straight cash way. But they have materials and skills, and even licensed people that are members of our course. They maybe would look to tap into those assets as well. But we aren't in a position to do that solicitation as a city. That would be onto the contractor's responsibility to do that.
Is there a print already made up? I mean, do you have an idea what it's going to look like?
Yes. It's similar in the external shape and direction as the concept design that we had with Kevin Anderson. It's just the internal components are more just properly allocated. It's just I guess more simple and just straightforward design on the interior, and doesn't waste some space. It didn't change it significantly, but working with the need to get that amount of people into that space, you still have to have a certain minimum threshold of size, and it would be around 6,000 square feet.
John, I've seen this plan. I think it's a great plan. I mean, I think everybody should have an opportunity to see it. The golf organization actually came over and talked to me about it and showed me the plan. I think it's a great plan. What I'm wondering is, would this bid just be for that plan, or would the bid include, carpet and furnishings and glassware and dishes and silverware and kitchenware and all of that too?
We would add minimum. We would do all of the upstairs space completely finished to the exterior extent. Then the furnishings would be bid alternates. Those would be components that we would add on, because we do have access with contract purchasing to maybe buy those materials at a lower rate than what might be generally included with the contractor. So, but plumbing features, sinks, cabinetries, effectively things that are attached to the wall or floor, those are the pieces that we're going to ask for to be included as much as possible in the base bid. And then everything that is a want that might not be an absolute need just to get the space operational, we would add that later. So as you mentioned, if we do look at changing the operations and franchising it out or contracting with somebody to operate, they may be bringing in their own furnishings and equipment to utilize. But we need to have the facility at least into a base level where they would be able to operate out of.
Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
To Lundberg and Bushwick?
So live stream broadcast, city council work session. John?
This has been part of our discussion for the last couple meetings. I believe we're at a position where we need to make a decision and move forward with the desire that we have. We heard from a public forum of a request from a resident to broadcast it for concerns about what we have. I'm making no recommendation either way. We can function with whatever the council decides, and leaving it to you all to make your decision of how do we want to move forward with this.
I make a motion to approve live stream the city council work sessions.
Is there a second?
Well, second for discussion.
Motion by Councilmember Storley, second by Councilmember Hanson. Discussion?
Mr. President, I would just make the point that it was discussed at length at a work session, and my understanding was that the only desire to potentially do that was if we separated out public comment from that so there was some that requested that and some that said not at all, and I will stand with what I said before. I don't believe the county does it. I don't believe the school board does it. They have the capabilities. I don't think it's a great idea. I am a very positive person that enjoys positive things about this community, and I don't think that always has come out in the past in those meetings, in those comments, and I don't think that the truth is necessary at those as we've seen in the past. So in the interest of betterment of the community and the attitude of the community, I would not support that. And also, I will say that I've supported veterans in this community a lot, and I have supported handicapped. So it's not me taking a shot at them that they don't deserve to hear those things.
Mr. President, last week there was a poll in the Morrison County Record, the record that, or the newspaper that we as a community use, and it showed that 17% of the people said yes without the public forum, 64.2 said yes with the public forum. So that's over 80% of the people that took this poll that said they wanted us to televise this, and 4 to 1 said with the public forum. Now, if that's not a message from the community, I really don't know what is.
If it was a scientific poll, it would carry a little weight, but since 3 people could vote multiple times, it really doesn't carry much weight with me.
And they don't need to be of voting age, I don't believe. They don't need to be residents. And I'm sorry.
Mr. President, may I ask a question of the press?
Certainly.
Do you know how many people responded to that poll, Tyler?
Not off the top.
It used to display that, didn't it?
Yes.
It used to have a percentage out of how many votes, and I tried to get an idea of, that would be some good information to know in the future.
Not necessarily if they can vote 45 times.
Well, and I'll echo that, Mr. Mayor. I voted 3 times on 3 different devices.
Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Ordinance number 17, 7th series, authorize and direct sale of property. Thorsten Lindquist and Teresa Ringwalski. Introduce. Lori.
Yes, Council President. So this ordinance would sell the property on 3rd Street Northeast to Thor Lindquist and Teresa Ringwalski. This is the property that we tore the house down, had it cleaned up, had the asbestos mitigated, tore the house down, cleaned it up, and now we will be selling it to Thor and Teresa. This will, the lot as it sits right now is a non-conforming lot. Thor Lindquist's lot is a non-conforming lot, so selling this to Thor, combining the lots will then make his a conforming lot. So that's the reason for the sale of the property. Plus, we took care of the blighted property that was next door to it.
What is the wish of the council?
Mr. President, I'll make a motion to introduce ordinance 17.
I'll second.
Motion by Councilmember Hanson, second by Councilmember Liljegren. Any discussion?
It's just
Just
introduction.
Oh, sorry.
Discussion.
So we don't need to do anything else.
Correct.
Paying agency Northland Trust Services General Obligation Permanent Improvement Revolving Fund, Series 2019A. Appoint approve. Lori.
With the sale of our 2019 improvement bonds, we do need to appoint a paying agent. That agent would be Northland Trust Services. They will handle the bond payments, so we make the payment to them. They would then disperse all of the payments to the people that bought shares of the bond. So this agreement would authorize them to be our paying agent for that bond issue.
What is the wish of the council?
Move to approve.
Second?
Sorry, was that you, Jim?
Yes, sir.
Motion by Councilmember Knopfler, second by Councilmember Storley. Discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Petition, bituminous surfacing, 8th Avenue Southwest, receive. Greg.
Yes, this evening we have a petition in front of you for paving on 8th Avenue Southwest between 8th Street and 10th Street Southwest. This is in the same general area as the other paving project. This would be for our 2020 construction season, but tonight we would be asking the council to receive this petition.
What is the wish of the council?
Mr. President, I move to receive this petition.
Second?
Motion by Councilmember Lundberg, second by Councilmember Storley to receive the petition. Discussion?
Yes, Mr. President. If I could, I'd just like to ask the city engineer on what the requirements are to be able to bond for a project like this, because wait, is this one just it's an avenue, right? So it's going to
This is
be
an avenue, yes.
side footage, which we know is at basically half the rates.
Sure. So we wouldn't be able to necessarily sell bonds for this type of project, but we would still be able to do the assessment portion of the project. We would use PIR funds, permanent improvement revolving, what's it stand for, Lori?
Yep, that's right.
Okay. So we'd use those funds to be able to pay for the project, and then with the assessments, we'd pay back those funds to that fund. So we wouldn't be able to sell bonds like we just approved, like we typically do with
Right.
it, but we would still use those funds.
Is this a state statute dictating this?
The 429, yes, that's the
Yes.
state statute.
Okay.
Yes.
The question is, I know in some other communities, and I can't remember which one, it's a Metro one, I talked to somebody on a council in another community. He actually worked for the street department in one suburb and was on the city council for another one. And one of those, I can't remember which one, but he was telling me that they don't have any assessments. It's strictly spread out throughout the city. So in those communities, they can't bond for any of those projects?
They can, they just choose to pay for it other ways. So like in our PIR fund, we use tax dollars to put into that, and then we pay for it. This Little Falls is a little bit different as far as we don't have that much into those funds, and so we bond for a lot of those projects because our funds are not as replenished as
Well, that's my
others.
question. It's for my education. I'm not suggesting that we do something different. I'm just wondering so can a community that doesn't do it via assessments, can they bond?
They can, yes, if they so choose.
No. You can sell bonds, you can sell revenue bonds or assessment bonds. So you can't just go out and borrow money to do a street project. You
Okay.
have to have a revenue source
Yeah.
pledged to it. So you have to either sell revenue bonds, which we do like for our water and wastewater plants, because we pledge the revenue of the water or the waste to pay back the bond, or we do assessments.
Okay.
Now, they can just set a levy and use that levy money to do street projects.
Right, well, my suspicion is they somehow bond, and that's why I'm just trying to be proactive in finding a way. We have a couple avenues
And-
already. Now we have another avenue, which is going to lead to, hey, how did you get your avenue paved? And I see this snowballing, and I think we need to be out front in a funding source if we're going to continue to get these petitions and improve the west side.
And depending on what all happens next year, if we, do enough projects where we can meet the 429 as far as the assessments are concerned, we could combine this with other projects and then do a bond for it that way. But it'll depend on what projects we do and how much, what's all out there.
Mr. President?
Right, like, pardon me, just one last thing, Mr. Storley, and then you can go. I think we have to look at Avenue petition. It'd be a change in the petition, but I think we're almost going to need to consider putting the alley in with that at the same time, and with that, I'll yield to Mr. Storley.
And I believe, isn't there a few other avenues that we've already approved earlier this year that we're moving back, that we were going to try to tie in with the Highway 27 project?
So there was 2 avenues, each a block long, and then an alley that we were looking at doing this year. We're moving those back as well to 2020 just because of timing. And then potentially this one is a petition for it. We haven't decided as a council if that's part of it or not. That'll be coming up at a later date. That would potentially be in our 2020 project as well. And then we were looking at, I think there was 5 potential avenues that we were looking at. Those are still a potential, but we'd be looking at 2020 with those as well.
And those were ones we brought up ourselves. No one petitioned for those.
Those are ones staff initiated, yes, correct.
If we were able, would we be able to move this into those, and would we come up with the proper bonding?
No, all of them are on the avenues, and so we wouldn't meet that 20% for that assessment rate because they're on the avenues, and generally the utilities are on the streets, and that's what generates the higher assessment percentage.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Request to display banner and city crews install Friends of Lindbergh Heritage. Consider. John.
Thank you, Council President. The Friends of Lindbergh Heritage, they are a partner with the Sister City group and this summer actually is our host summer for the Sister City Exchange with Le Bourget France. So they will be having an event and delegates from that city here in July of this summer. So they're hoping to have the banner hung and displayed in
It doesn't say
in our
where.
community on city property, and city property would need council approval to be hung. But yes, it does not
It
say.
doesn't say where.
And that would lead to city council to direct staff to where we'd want it to be hung on city property.
Does that banner fall within the sign?
On city property, we're exempt to our sign limitations.
Where does it usually hang?
I haven't lived in the community during the host
We used
time,
to have
so.
them right
Like right across
on
the
the corner by
highway?
Great River Arts. Yes,
Okay.
we had them a lot of times.
Right,
That's
and
where-
I believe it hasn't hung across the street for some time because the anchors that were in the buildings came loose, came out, and they weren't able to replace them, the ones that were in the buildings.
Correct.
And the last time it seems to me we had it up at Le Bourget Park for a while, and then when the French were here, and then I don't know where it moved to after that. Because they had a big event in Le Bourget Park,
Right.
and I don't remember where it went after that.
Do they have a suggestion of where they would like it on city property? Since they're the ones that are hosting it and planning the festivities?
That wasn't directly indicated to me. We could certainly identify.
I have a question, I think that can make this pretty easy. Who's the best city staff person to know where the sign can and cannot go and where it has been before?
Probably me.
Okay, with that, Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the Friends of Lindbergh Heritage to display the banner with the approval of City Engineer Greg Kimmen.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Motion by Councilmember Hanson, second by Councilmember Goshek. Discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Request for proposals, construction management, wastewater improvement project, approved. John?
Thank you, Council President. This next agenda item is the responses for our request for proposal, our RFP, on the construction management of the wastewater improvement plant. We had 4 responses to the RFP: Bolton and Mank, HR Green, SEH, and WSB. Tonight, we do have representatives here from both SEH and Bolton and Mank, Colin Markison and John Grutman. They, based on the RFP review and the scoring criteria that we established and approved, both myself and Matt Straight reviewed the RFPs, and we actually scored both firms equal in our response. So gave you some more information, details, the summary details about what they had. I feel their responses, both firms have adequate experience and knowledge for our project, the scope of our project, the work that we're doing with this plan. There are some, specific details noting that SEH did all of our design work for this project, and building it up, so they're very familiar with what we have going on. They have a plan in place for the work that they had when looking at the proposal. And we did ask for number of hours and estimated cost for those hours. When we looked at it, they did have the highest total number of hours that they concluded for the project. I would say that they certainly know it well, and they have an anticipation of what it wants to be, and they were trying to be very conservative too in what the time they would be allocating for this work. With Bolton and Mank, again, very experienced firm, has worked on projects of this size and scope before. I do have past history working with Mr. Grutman in Madison. Bolton and Mank were the engineering firms for a wastewater renovation project, albeit a smaller one for our city, but they did the project there. One of the aspects that we asked for in the RFP was familiarity with taking a design by another firm or a third party and bringing that through to a construction administration. They completed a project in Two Harbors, Minnesota, with a similar circumstances where they actually took that design that somebody else had done and followed through on the construction administration. It was a water treatment facility, but definitely have knowledge in doing that, and based on a conversation have had other experiences with that as well. They projected this cost based on their experience working on other projects, very similar size and scope, and similar design for work, and put in the lowest cost ratio of the project of what they anticipated. I believe that they are very fair in what they're doing, and have put forward their best estimate given the short time frame on the RFP response and the information that they had to put forward a fair effort. At this point, I would say I believe both firms will do an excellent job for the city. We will end up with a very good result on this project with whomever is decided. And because of the scores being tied, I am deferring that decision to the council to be made without a recommendation with one over the other.
We have discussion before we have a motion.
Mr. President, which firm's going to charge more?
The hours are, it's ultimately gonna potentially change. The proposal had Bolton and Mank made is a lower cost proposal than what SEH made. However, when looking at the total hours, their hourly rates are going to be very, very similar when you calculate in all aspects of the employees and the work that they're doing. It's ultimately going to come down to how much time is really needed during the course of a 20-month construction phase. It's going to be, that's a long time to really anticipate. Based on conversations that I had with both firms, SEH, they were really trying to be very conservative in the estimate and wanted to put in a number that they believed would be, certainly be the most adequate to get it without having to come back and asking for more.
I see some, in the Bolton Mink, they got, in the pros, included value-added engineering review of the plans in the cost of their proposal. What are the value-added engineering reviews that they've had in there?
So they would review the design that they have and look for any cost savings that they might see. We had some value added done on the design work last year when we brought this up for discussion. However, they would do, we paid for that service. They would be building that into the cost with their proposal.
Mr. President, are you looking for a motion or?
We need to have, that's what I was asking, can we have discussion before a motion, or do we need a motion to have discussion?
I think in this instance, because we're not coming with a recommendation for a motion, I think it would be prudent to have some discussion to maybe make a determination of what motion is going to be made, which firm might
That's
be
what I was hoping to
selected.
do, but I wanted to follow what we're supposed to
I
do.
know that, Mr. President, I know this is serious business, and it is, and this is lighthearted, but you can't, I don't know, pick one. It's like Sophie's choice here.
And I guess that, for me, was where I struggled with making the determination.
One of these guys didn't have a hair out of place or something like that?
Mr. President, I would, and I know both have great reputations, and SEH is familiar with it. They helped us get to this point. It was going actually down a different avenue at one time. So I would be in favor of accepting the proposal from SEH, only because of the background work that they've done on it and the long relationship we've had with them.
And Mr. Mayor, not to be a contrarian, I kind of like the concept of, since they're equal, another firm, another set of eyes. I mean, when we get the result of our audit every year, what's the one thing we hear? And a segregation of duties. So I think we have a situation here where, I don't think we're going to have any problem, we're not rejecting SEH. I mean, they had the engineering, and, for me, I kind of like a second set of eyes. Nothing to disrespect Colin at all. I think he's done a great job on this project, but all things being equal, if they scored equal and, another set of eyes, the included value engineering, I'm leaning toward Bolton and Mink.
Well, Mr. President, just briefly, last time we went with that extra set of eyes, it got us in about a 3-month.
Yeah, I left that absence intentionally.
Yeah, we've been through that whole other set of eyes thing.
Council President, this would not be looking at changing anything with the design. This is only just finding any small modifications. I really don't think this is, modifying the scope of work that we're looking at.
Well, I'm going to be as committal as our city administrator. I'm not going to make a motion.
Mr. Mayor, was yours considered as a motion?
No, I think we're still discussing. But I would. Unless you have an opinion.
I was just going to say, I would agree with you, just because there's a lot of background with what's there. No disrespect, because I'm sure you're great at what you do, but Colin has things there for a reason and knows why. I would be in favor of SEH.
I'm going to make a motion that we approve SEH to do this management over the project.
I'll second that.
Motion by Councilmember Goshek, second by Councilmember Liljegren. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Thank you both. Resolution 2019-35, acquisition of property, Morrison County adopt. John.
Thank you. This is following up on our introduction to effectively make a land swap with Morrison County and acquire a shed that they have over on the west side by the County Public Works Building, so that we would be able to acquire that shed, move it onto this new property, and use it for our police department activities, store vehicles and other property that we have.
What is the wish of the council?
Motion to adopt Resolution 2019-35, acquisition of property.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Storley, second by Councilmember Knopfler. Discussion? Resolution, call the roll, please.
Liljegren.
Yes.
Lundberg. Yes. Zilka.
Yes.
Hurkacz.
Yes.
Storley.
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Gushik.
Yes.
Knopfler.
Yes.
Carries.
Resolution 2019-39, authorized submittal of workplace safety grant, Minnesota Department of Labor and Industry, Glass Window City Hall. Adopt. John.
Thank you, Council President. This is for a grant through Minnesota Department of Labor through OSHA. This was part of a safety audit that we had done a couple years ago with our administration staff in the area that we have. One of the items that was identified for improvement was to add safety glass over that window and make that giving us some additional security features over that area. It was part of a larger safety audit for the entire City Hall facility. There's some other components of that we definitely need to look at, but I wanted to also bring those up in our strategic planning discussion, because it goes into what is the long-term viability of this, of the work investments that we make here. With this instance, we have very strong assurances that we will be granted we'll be receiving those grant funds if we decide to move forward with this project. So that being said, this was one of those components that I believe we really do need to be moving forward with now, and taking action into making those steps to improve the safety in our City Hall.
What is the wish of the council?
Motion to adopt Resolution 2019-39, authorized submittal for the workplace safety grant.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Storley, second by Councilmember Hanson. Discussion?
Is the staff, Mr. President, is the staff person Michael Neiman, is he the one that's requesting this?
Yes, he is the one that drafted and created the proposals for
that? Okay.
for the grant.
Mr.
And
President.
working with for the submittal.
Mr. President, I remember this actually came out of a mayor's meeting in Royalton, where we had a presentation by the League of Minnesota Cities, and that's what helped get the police department their safety glass.
It's been very welcome there. I know that's given the staff a lot of peace of mind when people come and go. You just don't know, and we have very positive contact with the community, and we also have negative contact, and it just provides that little peace of mind for the employee that's sitting there and has to interact.
That's good.
We just went through this with Pine Grove Manor. It's a good idea to keep staff protected, because you don't know how people will react at certain times. So again, I agree with you. It just gives them a peace of mind.
But Lori, you're going to have to get a box of Kleenex or a clipboard or something to stick over the window so the air doesn't flow through there.
Resolution, call a roll, please.
Lundberg.
Yes.
Zilka.
Yes.
Hurkacz.
Yes.
Storley.
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Gushik.
Yes.
Knopfler.
Yes.
Liljegren.
Yes.
Carries.
Resolution 2019-40, authorized submittal of Legacy Arts and Culture Grant, Camp Program, Heritage Preservation Commission. Adopt. John.
Yes, thank you, Council President. So this is a proposal to partner with the St. Cloud Heritage Preservation Commission. They're looking at the Commission Assistance and Mentoring Program, CAMP. It's an alliance in helping to train and build up HPCs in different areas. The St. Cloud one is really pretty new, so they're looking at some support from us to help get this program in and get some training so that they can help these groups out and really make the best of these efforts. Our HPC has been very active for a very long time. I think they do some really great work, and it'd be nice to give them some additional support and training and resources to help them continue doing some great things for our community.
What's the wish of the council?
Move to adopt?
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Knopfler, second by Councilmember Storley. Discussion?
Yes, Mr. President, the second whereas, where it says the City of Little Falls through the Heritage Preservation Commission is a certified local government, should that read the Heritage Preservation Commission through the City of Little Falls is a certified local government? That's how they're enabled, that's what makes them eligible to apply for this grant. Because the Heritage Preservation Commission is applying for the grant, but the city is the fiscal agent or the government entity. And does the city of St. Cloud not fund and acknowledge their HPC? Why can't the city of St. Cloud do it through, why can't the St. Cloud HPC do it through their city? Not that it's wrong to partner with another city, just for clarification.
Sorry, go ahead, Lori.
I believe they're asking for the City of Little Falls' assistance in getting the St. Cloud HPC more active and what our processes are and what we've done to promote historic preservation.
Okay, so this grant, if we get the grant, will enable our HPC and the St. Cloud HPC to go to this camp. Is that correct?
It's not a camp. Camp is
Well,
an
it's called
acronym.
CAMP.
The training program.
It's a
Right.
training program.
Right.
So it will allow for Little Falls to train, if you will, St. Cloud in what we've done to be an active commission.
Oh, so it's paying us to train them, kind of thing.
And them to come with us. I mean, it'll be a joint effort.
Okay.
Resolution, call a roll, please.
Silka?
Yes.
Hurkak?
Yes.
Storley?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Gushik?
Yes.
Knopfler?
Yes.
Liljegren?
Yes.
Lundberg?
Yes.
Carries.
Equipment donation, sponsorship, signage, Fit Trail, Pine Grove Park and Zoo. Approve. Greg.
Yes, last fall, Morrison County received a grant for some fitness equipment. They called it the Fit Trail. They donated that to the City of Little Falls. We've accepted that. This day of, the last beginning of May when we had the Day of Caring, we had the National Guards members put that equipment together and put it in place. That's now in place, but they have sponsors. Morrison County's gotten sponsors for those various stations, those fitness stations along there. And so they would like the council's approval for the logos of the various stations on there. You'll see that in the packet of the folks that donated towards this equipment. So with council's approval this evening, we would like approval to have these sponsors included on those signs for the Fit Trail.
What is the wish of the council?
Make a
Motion
motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Goshek, second by Councilmember Storley. Any discussion?
Yes, I'd like to mention that no white pine trees were destroyed putting this Fit Trail in.
Thank you. Somebody asked me that this week.
Yeah, it's, There were none destroyed. They took special care. There is some false reports out there that we went in there and did some damage, but that's not true.
Correct.
Good to hear.
I have a question, Mr. President. Did Morrison County donate this exercise equipment, or did the sponsors donate the equipment? Or was the equipment donated by the sponsors with the understanding that they would receive advertising in exchange for their donation? Because if that's the case, it's not really a donation. It's purchasing advertising in exchange for a piece of equipment. I mean,
So Morrison County received a grant for the equipment. They donated that to the city of Little Falls. The sponsors on there also contributed to the purchase of that, so I think there was like a 50-50 split that they had to pay for the grant. So these sponsors helped pay for the difference in that equipment.
okay, and they sponsored it with the understanding that they'd get advertising in exchange for that?
I don't believe there was any understanding for that. I didn't have those discussions, so I don't know. I'm just going from my interpretation
Okay.
of meeting with them, but I don't believe there was ever an understanding that they would be.
In that case, I don't think we should have logos. I think True Giving doesn't care if it receives credit or not. And I think putting up a bunch of logos at the zoo is going to clutter up the zoo. That's my take on it. Don't let the left hand know what the right hand's doing, you know.
Any other discussion?
Mr. President, my concern would be if there was an agreement on it and we would vote this down, for them to have their names on there, I think that would be bad also.
Well, if they agreed to it, then, yeah, then you got to stick with it. But if it was not part of the condition, and I know a lot of times, you know, a gold sponsor receives such and such, and a silver sponsor receives such and such, but, you know, was that part of the agreement? Was that we would put up their logos? And if it wasn't,
Mr. President, could Greg go back to the county and find out?
Yeah,
For sure. So that way, if we're going to vote yes or no, we're not going to hurt anybody's feelings if it's part of an agreement that with the sponsoring fees.
Well, at the same time, I would like to add, if that was a stipulation, who entered into that agreement without the authority to do so. Yeah, now, myself, I'm not against some logos, frankly, I don't care about their motives for donating. They did, and I don't have a problem recognizing these people, but I think on a grander scale, what we're talking about here and not hurting feelings is and asking the question, and we can certainly postpone it and pose the question, was this part of the agreement? Then the further question is, well, who entered into that agreement without having the authority to speak for what the city would allow or not allow?
I guess we'll find out after Greg comes back next time with the result. And I guess we can have that discussion then, because we could be discussing something that may not have took place.
Right.
And we already have a motion and a second?
can I make a motion to postpone this to the next council meeting?
I don't think so, because you didn't make the original motion,
No,
Okay.
It has to be the original person.
Okay.
which is you, Frank.
Yeah, I'm going to retract my original motion and change it to, let's put it off until the next meeting and get some more details on it. Now, whoever seconded has to agree that too.
And then, Mr. President, if Greg could find out too, how large are these logos? Is it just a little thing that's plastered on one piece of equipment like a sticker, or is it a sign?
I'll find out.
I think that would make a big difference too.
Well, Mr. President, I walked through this trail, and I don't think those logos can't be that big, because they're just little stations when you're walking through a trail through the woods and doing some stretching exercises and so forth and so on. And there's a board up there explaining how to do those different exercises and stuff as you're walking through the trails. So I don't see where they're going to be able to put a very big logo up anywhere on there.
And I'll add to that, the logos aren't out there yet.
They're not? No, they're
No,
not.
they're not.
So being that you seconded the motion Do you agree with Frank for,
Yes, I'll second the propose, to postpone it.
Resolution 2019-33A, Contamination Cleanup Grant Program, adopt? John?
Thank you. This is actually a correction or an additional resolution that was missed as part of the submittal for our cleanup grant through Department of Employment and Economic Development, DEED, for the Centra Soda property. So we've had Landmark Environmental that's been working on developing a cleanup plan. We're looking for grant dollars to help support that additional cleanup plan and phase 2 investigations that would need to take place, as well as a response action plan afterwards. And this was just an additional component of the resolution that needed to be identified and clarified, so in order for them to accept our application.
So that's what you're referring to when it says the above referenced project?
Exactly.
Okay.
This was already approved before. It's just they wanted it in this format specifically.
What is the wish of the council?
Mr. President, I'll make a motion to adopt Resolution 2019-33 Alpha Contamination Cleanup Grant Program.
I'll second.
Motion by Councilmember Hanson, second by Councilmember Knopfler. Any discussion? Resolution, call a roll, please.
Hurkak?
Yes?
Storley?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Bushig?
Yes.
Knappala?
Yes.
Liljegren?
Yes.
Lundberg?
Yes.
Zilka?
Yes.
Carried.
City Council reports on city authorities, boards, bureaus, commissions, and committees.
Mr. President, so I just want to be clear on, we're having a meeting on June 17th, Monday, from 1 to 3 p.m. And John, you're going to be sending out an outline a few days before that?
Correct.
On the things that are going to be discussed?
Correct.
Where will that meeting be held?
I think this would be an adequate location for that meeting. We'll probably set the tables up for more of an more comfortable setting.
Any announcements, anyone?
Mr. President, I do have a couple of them, if I may. Sorry to jump in. On June 4th, there is a regional, what's it called? Regional Transportation Coordinating Council at, it'll be held at Sprout Marketplace, basically indicating what the transit needs are for the area. That's between 6 o'clock and 8 o'clock in the evening on June 4th. The tennis courts on the west side are getting resurfaced, so those will be closed off until that work is completed. And then one last thing, I know we've had some construction projects going on here as far as our Trunk Highway 27 stuff goes. Unfortunately, CenturyLink hasn't been the most prompt at marking their utilities, so I'm hopeful that they're going to be getting better, but I suspect there may be an issue where at sometimes the utilities get cut with contractor doing the digging, but if that occurs, the contractor's been taking the right steps in order to make that happen, but there's been a delay on CenturyLink's point to get those utilities marked. So we're doing the best we can with that, but hopefully there's no outages, but I crossing my fingers on it. That's all I got.
Mr. President, just thinking back, maybe we should have citizen complaints and compliments, because I have a citizen's compliment regarding Pine Grove Zoo. Dwight Nelson was there with his granddaughter and a bunch of her schoolmates. I believe they're from the St. Cloud area. And from what I hear, there was about 500 children out there from different communities. And Dwight said that he heard that they said that it was the best field trip that they've ever taken from that school, and that the staff out there did a fantastic job with handling the mayhem. So kudos to Pine Grove Zoo staff.
Can I go now?
Go ahead.
Okay, but just want to let the council know that coming up here shortly, we're going to have the Little Falls Golf Extravaganza, the Al Bauman now Memorial Extravaganza. And about 5 years ago, I took over from a previous council member acting on behalf of the council. where the council and staff sponsor a hole at the tournament. This is out of pocket, no city funds, strictly voluntary. So at our next meeting, I will be accepting from those who wish to participate $10 a head to go toward that whole sponsorship. Last year I forgot to ask and just paid for it out of pocket.
Well, and I think it's a great idea. If we don't support the golf course, who should? So I will participate. Remember to ask.
Anyone else? We'll adjourn at 8:43.
I have an idea for you, John.
Okay.